top of that, he's running all special energy against a deck that thrives on discarding energy.
We have got a Sableye deck here. It's all about that junk hunt, recovering those cards from your discard pile, so you can basically just use these disruption cards, like Enhanced Hammer, for instance, over and over again. So counter energy's fine for Xander, but it's going to be one counter energy per turn, except it's probably not, because Caleb's deck, it's not a deck that takes prizes, it's a deck that tries to deck you out. If you're not behind on prizes, counter energy, it doesn't do very much, John.
Yeah, that's right. Unfortunately, so... Luckily, Counter Energy is a very cool card because you can play it on any of your Pokemon, and when you're not behind on prizes, it is worth a single colorless energy. So Xander isn't completely without options, where he could potentially attach that at some point, deal a little bit of damage, but I think Caleb is in a very strong position right now. He runs Life Dew as his A-Spec choice. Remember, A-Spec is a card you can run only one copy of in your deck. They are only legal in this expanded format, black and white on, so sets from the black and white expansion released several years ago to the most recent one. All these A-Spec cards, these special one per deck cards, have rotated from the standard format, but they're still perfectly legal and expanded, so you have some great combos going on here with this Sableye.
Yeah, there's a lot of options for him there. I mean, Caleb, you see he's playing a couple of Trick Shovel, which, it's a bit more complicated than this, but essentially it just discards a top card of your opponent's deck. That's certainly the role it's playing in Caleb's deck here. And he's got the Life Dew on that Sableye. That A-Spec basically says that if Sableye is knocked out, your opponent doesn't take a prize. So rather than taking, say, 6 KOs to win the game, Life Dew, you can't use it every turn, but you use it, get KO'd, junk hunt, get it back. In a best case scenario, you can use it on every other Sableye. That basically means 12 KOs for Xander to actually get a win here. And you said it yourself, John, he's running a limited amount of special energy, which are going to be discarded pretty much every turn. He's going to have to be really careful with his resources, because otherwise that Life Dew is going to keep coming back, and Sableye, it's going to be like 12 knockouts to actually get a win here.
Exactly. Now, there's some ways that Xander can get around this. The first one, and possibly the simplest, is to play the Field Blower item card. Field Blower lets you discard any combination of up to 2 tools and or stadium cards in play, either yours or your opponent's. So, of course, when you're against this deck in your Xander, you're going to be wanting to discard that Life Dew if you can. And then there's also the option to bring up something that doesn't have a Life Dew on it. It's something a little more vulnerable and maybe even essential to your strategy, because ability lock is important here. So if Xander at some point sees it as the best play, he could bring up that Garbodor from breakpoint and knock it out, while at the same time get his abilities back. But he's not doing that much right now, is he?
He's just not had a good start. And when you're against a deck like Sableye Garbodor, the start is everything. I mean, Caleb's got a Garbodor out. I believe it's got a tool attached to it. So Xander here, he's ability locked. He's got very little on the board. He's got a Sableye, you know, with a Life Dew facing him down. And I think he actually there just used Supernatural Dance to put 3 damage counters on that bent Sableye. You get to put 1 damage counter on your opponent's field per Pokemon in their discard. Dropping 3 damage counters, it's not amazing, but at least it's an attack. At least it's some damage on the field.
Right, it's something that you can do in a really desperate situation where Garbodor is a threat to him, where if he's able to get that Garbodor off the field and get his abilities back for at least a little while, then maybe he can turn this around. But Caleb's already thinking ahead here, and that's part of the reason why he's benching that Trubbish, hoping maybe to set up a second Garbodor in case the first one gets knocked out.
And I think that's an excellent play. You know, you need that Garbodor. It's a big part of your strategy. So rather than having one, why don't you have two? Oh, there was no tool attached. I do apologise. Bit of glare on the screen, messing us up. Now, however, there definitely is a tool attached. So now abilities are off. And Caleb got a bit of a break there. Xander had a couple of turns where abilities were online. He could have played a Tapu Lele. He could have got a Zoroark out and done some trades. As it is, even when he had those turns, he got nothing. There was just nothing he could do. And I believe that was a...
Trainer's mail.
It was a trainer's mail. Why did he flip the dice? Missed the card he played. It might have been a roller skates. That would... No, I don't know if he even plays roller skates. I must confess, I saw him flip, but I didn't actually see what card he was playing.
And you know, some variations of this deck run Hypnotoxic Laser, but not quite as many anymore, and neither does Caleb's variant.
No, there's not there. Now, one card they do both play, and this could be big. Both players actually play the full 4 copies of Puzzle of Time. So you were saying earlier about using Field Blower to get rid of Life Dew. Well, that does give Xander extra access to Field Blower to get rid of Life Dew to take prizes. But by the same token, Caleb's Puzzle of Time give him extra access to Life Dew without having to junk hunt. So there's hopefully going to be some terms for Caleb where he can go, oh, you've knocked out a Sableye, you've not taken a prize, let me Puzzle of Time, grab it straight back again. So there could potentially be like 3 turns in a row where Xander could take a KO and not actually take a prize. Caleb is trying to frustrate his opponent, and certainly early on here, it seems to be working.
I think I agree right now. Xander Pro, very experienced player, the defending champion of this very regional championship, is going to do his best to try to find some way out of this, but honestly, if I were in Xander's shoes, I would not feel very good at all. I mean, this is game 1, there's plenty of time left, so of course I completely understand him wanting to play this out, get a feel for his options, but he's been sitting there with just that Zorua and that Oricorio and not much else.
He's not, and that's a really awkward thing. When you're playing against something like Sableye Garbodor, they're going to get rid of your energy. They're going to lock your abilities. I mean, you even see Sableye sometimes using Confuse Ray just for some extra fun. And that if you get set up, you have such a great advantage. We saw this in an earlier round with the Primal Groudon having Wobbuffet in the active. It's hard to get set up, but we saw in that round the player was able to get set up, and they were able to do just enough in just enough time to pull out a win. That's what Xander's hoping for. The good news is he's got time. Caleb's is not a deck that wins quickly. The bad news is that is just a very poor setup at the moment.
Right, although a single top deck could potentially change things. Now, Caleb, it seems to me, has been making some very smart plays, setting himself up in case any of those options happen, but there is a very powerful supporter card that could turn things around. Getsus. Unfortunately, Caleb has a Trick Shovel lock on Xander right now, and by that I mean Trick Shovel lets you do one of 2 things. It lets you take a look at the top of your deck and choose to discard it if you'd like. The second thing is, look at the top card of your opponent's deck and choose to discard it if you'd like. So what Caleb is doing here is he's discarding cards that he doesn't want Xander to draw, but he's potentially keeping cards that he wants Xander to draw. So that means that Xander's bad hand could potentially stay bad for even longer.
Yeah, I mean, I like this play a lot. You see, he's kept the energy. I think it was a special energy, maybe a counter energy. So Caleb's basically going, you know what, I'm going to let you top deck that, because I can get rid of it with an enhanced time, or if you just leave it there, it's not doing very much. And in the meantime, I can now take advantage of this by knowing that you're not going to draw out of it. You said yourself, John, one top deck he could be out of it. We saw a Trick Shovel get rid of a Zoroark, which is not great, because he kind of needs that. I mean, a Zoroark and a Field Blower here could change the game around. But, like you say, with that Trick Shovel lock, Caleb can actually guarantee that Xander is not going to top deck those 2 cards. And that's what makes this even worse for him. It's not that he's not got anything now, it's that Caleb is literally controlling the deck. But it doesn't look like Caleb put his prizes out.
He was playing a Gladion, it looks like.
That makes perfect sense.
He'd grabbed a Gladion.
Okay, that makes sense. I was going to say, that was very confusing for a moment. I turned around and I'm like, where are his prizes? Yeah, Gladion does make a lot of sense.
They better go right back where they need to go, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and they did. Life is good.
Yeah, that's right.
And I had a look. He is playing a Gladion, so yes, absolutely. I mean, Gladion's a good card. It lets you search your prizes for a card and then replace it with Gladion, which is really quite nice because we were in a format for a long time where we didn't have a reliable way of searching your prizes. And, you know, back to old formats, we had things like Azalf that let you do that. And older players have been used to this for so long that you end up in a format without it, and everyone goes, hang on a second. Can we have something?
Yeah, where's my card to do what I want to do? One thing that's very interesting is Pokemon as a card game is a great combination of new and old, where there's several ideas that repeat themselves over the years. There's some things such as looking at your prizes and choosing a card, and then replacing a card into your prizes. That's something we've seen before. Ross was talking about that with Gladion and Azalf, counter energy. So if you're an old player, now's a great time to get back into the game. So if you played any time between base set and 2005, 2006, all of those great, awesome effects that you remember, even way back to when the game was super simple with base set, all of that's back in a way.
It's really quite funky. Now, Kayla's been doing his thing. What you see him doing now, he's just using Junk Hunt every turn to recover 2 Puzzle of Time, so he can grab any 2 cards from his discard. Junk Hunt gets items back, but what he's actually doing here is getting the items back being his Puzzle of Time, so he can then recover any cards. We did see him actually using a Team Skull Grunt to get rid of a double colourless energy that Xander was holding in his hand ready for if he got a Zoroark. Well, Caleb actually got rid of it before it ever hit the field using Team Skull Grunt, which I think was a very, very nice play on his part. And Team Skull Grunt is another one of those cards that really changes things up. You can get rid of your opponent's energy now without actually waiting for them to attach it. And in a game like this, Xander's not going to attach it until he can use it. Team Skull Grunt comes in, gutted.
Now, with the Xander situation right here, I would say that he may have potentially been out of this game as early as the first or second turn. And normally I don't like saying that. I like to be very conservative about possibilities like that. But in this case, it might be the case where Xander is struggling to do something with what he has. But unfortunately, we saw that opening start, not that much to work with. If you have some access to a really good, helpful supporter card that can turn the tide, like Ghetsis from Plasma Freeze, which lets you look at your opponent's hand, shuffle all of their items back into their deck. That is a critical card against the Sableye matchup because they are all about getting their items back. They're about getting their Puzzles of Time back. They're about getting their Trick Shovels back. And of course, Life Dew.
Life Dew is quite important. Life Dew is very important. Now, Xander has actually gone for, and I love this, it's the old secret rare Foul Play Zoroark, which means that he could potentially kind of copy some attacks. He could use Junk Hunt or something like that himself to get some cards back. That could potentially give him an opening to set up. But we do see Caleb here just switching between his Sableye, putting the one with a Life Dew back into the active, and, you know, trying to make sure that if Xander does go for a KO, one thing Xander could do is, if he's got a double colours, he could use Foul Play to copy Confuse Ray to try and confuse Caleb's Sableye, so that if he then doesn't flip ahead, then he fails a Junk Hunt, maybe giving Xander just a turn or two to breathe and maybe do his thing without constantly getting trick shoveled.
Yeah, I think that is an interesting possibility. It is a good chance that he could potentially open something up with that. However, Caleb has a really great hand right now. I mean, we can't even see it, but I feel like he has all of his options sitting there in his hand right now. He's got his puzzles back. He's got everything else he can need. He probably has an energy that he's sitting on too. So the confusion, even if he hit the heads, it might not work as well as a Junk Hunt to maybe force something else out of him. But it seems like Caleb has an answer to everything that Xander could do to get out of this bad situation.
Oh yeah, I mean Caleb's in the perfect position for a Garbodor Sableye player. What you're really in most games, what you're assuming is going to happen is your opponent's going to get a Pokemon or two set up, they're going to take some KOs, and it's going to be a bit of a race. Can I recover my Life Dews enough? Can I get rid of their energy? And it really is a resources battle of keeping the Life Dew while getting rid of their energy, and there's a big challenge in that to keep it rolling. He's not had to do that this game. He's not had to recover Life Dew once. He's had to get rid of very little energy, and he's in a weird position, which is not usual for a Sableye Garbodor player of, oh, I'll get some extra energy on the bench. I'll keep all these cards in my hand just in case. I'll use Team Skull Grunt to preempt his energy attachment. When you're doing stuff like that, you know you're in the driver's seat.
Yeah, I almost feel like Caleb might be a little cursed just by having almost too many good options, where if he didn't have such a great control over the top deck, over the top card of Xander Pro's deck, then it might be a little bit different because he has so many cards in his hand. He has so many different options. However, I don't think he's going to trip himself up here. I think he's definitely going to carry this through. Now, one thing that I'm really not sure of is he can't really choose the top card of his deck. He can't hope to hit something random because he knows that Caleb is going to give him something. So the only thing that he could hope for when it comes to Trick Shovel choosing the top card of Xander's deck is hoping that 2 or 3 cards in a row are all good cards. So forcing Caleb to discard 3 good cards in a row, draw a top card, and it happens to be a 4th good card. So that's asking for a lot, but considering that this is a math game, there are a lot of probabilities going on, it could totally happen.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the one thing that Xander really wants here is a field blower. A field blower to get rid of that Garbodor. I know he's got an Ultra Ball in hand, so if he can use that Ultra Ball, maybe grab himself something like a Tapu Lele, for instance, that could be a way back into the game. The problem is he's only playing one field blower. He could potentially use a double Puzzle of Time, but like you said, Caleb is trying to stop him doing all of this. Chances of him actually getting his field blower or a double Puzzle of Time, with Caleb doing what he's doing with the trick shovels, is incredibly slim right now. And at this stage of the game, we really do need to think about a concession for the sake of saving time. Unfortunately, that is a skill in the Pokemon trading card game. For the purposes of all of us getting home tonight, we need to have time limits on these games. And, you know, with 45 minutes to play out 3 games, there comes a point where you have to think, I'm going to concede this game, I can't play it out any longer, but if I concede now, maybe I've got time to pull out 2 wins to turn this from a potential draw into a win. Whereas if you lose a long game 1, win a long game 2, that puts you in a tie. And in a tournament where you need to go 7 wins, 2 losses or better to get into day 2, every single tie is incredibly damaging to your record.
Absolutely. Now, they've got a little bit of a buffer right now because they're both undefeated. They don't even have a single tie on the board, which is great for them. But as Ross said, we have a time limit. There is something that we have to deal with. There's, at this point, Sableye as the control deck, as the lock deck, as the deck that's trying to win by discarding all of Xander's cards in his deck. He is hoping that this game is dragged out as long as possible, and that way, when they begin their second game, they're hopefully, from Caleb's perspective, is not too much time left. So, in this situation, Caleb is perhaps gunning for a longer game 1, maybe 35, 40 minutes, and then with 10 minutes remaining and best 2 out of 350 to essentially close out the second game in a draw without no clear winner.
It you end up in this weird situation where you're like, I don't need to win game 2, I just need to make sure game 2 doesn't finish. In Swiss, it's only completed games that will count towards the match record. If Caleb wins round game 1 and game 2 doesn't finish, then game 2 never happened. You know, Xander could take 5 prizes and game 2 never happened, which means all Caleb needs to do, like you say, win a long game 1 and then just stop game 2 actually ending. And there we see a trick shovel getting rid of a double colourless energy. And Xander, it's got to be frustrating as Xander, like, because you're sitting there thinking, I could really have used that. Foul play could have been really good right now.
Yeah, although on the plus side for Xander's perspective, he's a very experienced player, so the more experience that you build up when playing, the less frustration results, even from an incredibly frustrating deck like Sableye that controls the top cards of your own deck and tries never to let you draw what you need. So I think what he might be hoping for here is perhaps winning a fast game 2 and game 3. That's actually a not too unlikely possibility. Where, like we were talking about earlier, Getsus is an incredibly useful card. So if Xander loses this game, then presumably he would be choosing to go first. Could play Getsus over a Bridget. Would be a little risky because Bridget, as we've talked about many times before on the stream today, lets you choose your bench Pokemon to put into play, non-GX or non-EX. So get everything into play. That's your normal game plan with a deck like Zoroark, but you could take it a little risky. You could play the Getsus on a pretty decent shot of Caleb having a handful of items and possibly winning the game off of that.
And that would absolutely work. I mean, if you need to just KO 1 or 2 Sableye to win the game, that's something you can do, and you can do it in a couple of turns, which is even better for his purposes. I mean, it's definitely possible. And if we end up in a situation where someone needs to win a quick game, it's certainly more likely it's going to be Xander than Caleb. Now, Caleb does actually play an attacker. We saw it earlier. There is a single copy of the Garbodor from Guardians Rising. It does 20 damage for each item in the discard.
And how much do you think he's doing right now? I think it's a lot.
I would say quite a bit. It's not something you want to rely on. I mean, you could potentially kind of, recover it back with Puzzle of Time and then use it 2 or 3 times in a row. That's a kind of, I need to take prizes now, or my main strategy isn't working. It's kind of it's a desperation play. It works sometimes, and like you say, right now, because you're discarding so many cards with Trick Shovel, it can be a viable strategy. But he discarded it early on in the game. You know Caleb does not care about Garbodor from Guardians Rising right now. He has got Xander's deck right where he wants it. And for Caleb, this is probably the opposite. It's probably really enjoyable for him. He's probably having a wonderful time right now.
Well, as someone who's played a lot of lock decks and a lot of degenerative mill-out decks before, I kind of... it's tough to say, where there is that feeling where you do enjoy kind of being in the driver's seat, where you enjoy being able to control the situation. If you're like Sam Chen from a couple rounds ago with his Shock Lock deck, where if you might be a Whale Lord player and you're constantly discarding your opponent's energy, to be in the position of one of these lock decks is kind of exciting, but if they ever break out of it, if they find a way to break your game plan, it can be a little unnerving.
Well, speaking of which, I want to take that point, and I want to take your point about Gets This, because Xander actually managed to get himself a Versus Seeker, and he actually managed to get that into a Gets This. He's gotten rid of all the item cards from Caleb's deck, which were many, it's like 6 or 7, but he's also going to draw 6 or 7 cards now. If ever there was a turn where Xander had a chance to turn it around, he's drawn a Puzzle of Time, he's drawn a Guzma.
He's drawn a couple energies.
He's not, I mean, this, oh, and he got a double colorless, and he's got a Zoroark, a GX there. Now, of course, he needs to be a bit careful, because now he's getting closer to decking out by drawing all those cards. But he's actually got, for the first time in this entire game, Xander's he's got some plays. He can do stuff this turn.
That's right. He's got a huge hand, and you know what? Xander's deck relative to other Zoroark GX variants, Zoroark GX, a very powerful card. We've talked about it many times before. This is a recurring theme, a card with a lot of HP, a lot of damage potential. But his variation is a little more unique, a little more different because of the counter energy and the special additional attackers that he's included. But you know what? He can go ahead and be a little more aggressive. He can be a little more straightforward by playing the double colorless energy, relying on that over his counter energy, and perhaps copying Sableye at Junk Hunt, perhaps using at some point, probably not right now, but at any rate, turning this around, doing his best to turn it around, because now he's actually got options as opposed to what Caleb has given him, which was, up until now, nothing.
Well, he did get the Field Blower there. He got rid of the tool that was on the Garbodor, so abilities are back on as he evolves into a Zoroark GX. He got rid of the Life Dew on the Sableye, which, I mean, it's probably going to be Puzzle of Time back shortly, but for the time being, it's at least gone. And he's got the energy. The one thing is, he's not KOing at the moment, and he's got a very small deck at the moment. He needs to start taking some KOs. So as much as I love the double colorless on that Zoroark in the active, he's not taking a KO with it. We cannot for a second assume that double colorless is going to stay on there. So Xander really does need to start taking some KOs here. He's not going to win unless he takes 6 prizes. He's not going to deck out Caleb or anything like that. And I just, there's a part of me that looks at that Zoroark, and I'm just thinking, if only that was the breakthrough Zoroark. If only you could just, use that attack to take advantage of the bench, take a big KO on Sableye. It's just...
If only you could start drawing prizes.
Exactly. I just don't... Even like a Junk Hunt here, it's... Yes, you're getting more cards. Yes, you can start getting set up. But when you look how few cards are left in his deck, there comes a point where you just need to start taking prizes. Now, the good news is he's got a very large hand size at the moment. You've got to think he's got access to an N at some point. So I don't think he's going to deck out in the next turn or two. But he is going to have to find an N very shortly, or Caleb is going to use those trick shovels not to hamper his setup, but just to out and out win the game.
Right, and remember that right now, Caleb has a lot of resources. When that Gets Us was played, nothing was discarded from Caleb. It was all shuffled back into his deck. So the past turn, Caleb was actually a little unlucky when he played his supporter card for the turn. He didn't draw outright into any energy denial, although it looks like he might have just hit some right now. But first he's opting to play the Trainer's Mail. Let's see what he's got off of that.
He's being a bit sneaky. Options. He's hiding it. I can't see what he's got.
Yeah.
It's rude.
Yeah, you should just fan it for us to take a look at.
Yeah, just like show it to the camera. Just be like, hey boys, here's what I've got. Actually, I can't even see what he got. I know it's a Sun and Moon trainer card.
Yeah.
I can tell you that much.
Yeah, you can tell by the foil. Every new block has a different type of foil to it, so little subtle things that are easier to catch on to.
Did not catch it, unfortunately.
But you did catch it as a Sun and Moon.
Indeed. It's a border. They have different borders as well. They change it when a new block comes in. That was the giveaway. Now, Caleb here, there's not really much he needs. Like you say, I think some energy denial would be nice here. I think getting rid of that double colourless energy would be a really good thing to do. He does have a Versus Seeker, but of course he's already played the N, so anything he gets here he's not going to actually be able to play. Which is actually quite nice, because like I was saying, Xander did need the N. But I think Caleb was going, you know what, even though I'm refreshing your hand with an N, I would rather give you a new hand and make you deck out later for two reasons. Firstly, you got a big hand like that, you might actually be able to start making some plays. And secondly, and this is a good point you made yourself, Caleb wants like a 40-minute game one. So why would you not, if you're that confident you're going to win, then go for it. Make their deck larger again, because then you're just basically going, I might be making your deck larger, but in my eyes, I'm actually adding 10 minutes to this game, and that is exactly what I want to do.
Right, and I tell you what, if I were on Xander's side right now, I would be very worried about that Trubbish becoming a Trash Alliance Garbodor at some point, being able to do 20 times the number of the many, many, many items in his discard, regardless of the fact that he may or may not be copying Junk Hunt. But luckily for Xander, he has been able to keep that double colorless energy on to make it very clear to anybody, even if you don't play Pokemon, the odds of him being able to keep that there were not that good. But the fact that it's been able to stay there not just one turn but two, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic for him. He just needs to make some plays here. He needs some options. He's not in danger of decking out in the next turn or two now, which could be a blessing or a curse depending on how you look at it. Like I said, if he loses this game, it's in his best interest to lose as fast as you possibly can.
Oh, it looks like Xander played a Getsus, which is normally a very good option against Sableye, but he did not draw a whole lot off of it. It looked like about 2 or 3 items, so Caleb still has a bunch of supporter options in his hand right now, and I'm not sure if Xander is going to try to progress his prize situation at all, or if he's just going to keep on junk hunting, even with that relatively low deck.
I mean, he's in a better position now. He's bought himself a few turns, certainly, but he needs to take 6 prizes. You know that Life Dew's coming back. And if you can start taking prizes before that Life Dew does come back, then you can maybe get 2, 3, 4 prizes. When that Life Dew comes back, it keeps coming back. The hardest thing for these Sableye Garbodor decks in terms of Life Dew is finding it the first time. Once you've found it, you can junk hunt for it, you can puzzle of time for it. Getting it out of your discard is easy. Getting it out of your deck is far more difficult. So the fact that, it is in a discard at the moment, but even so, Caleb doesn't have it back. And if you can just take some prizes before he gets it back.
Oh, there goes double colorless energy.
Yeah, that was nice. That's exactly what he needed. And it just seems like Xander, even when he's getting stuff, he's not able to take prizes. And at the end of the day, as banal as this sounds on a Pokemon trading card game stream, for most decks, you need to take prizes.
Exactly. But Sableye is not just any other deck, where probably one of the recurring themes we've probably seen all day is special, unique decks that are very different from the normal way that people play. Bench your opponent out, where they have no Pokemon on their bench after you've knocked out the active, draw all of your prize cards, or force your opponent to have no cards left in their deck when they draw. Those are the 3 main ways to win, and technically this can do one or the other, but in this situation, there is also the additional game on top of that being played, where in addition to going directly for your win con, you're going for all the control options. You're trying to deprive Xander of being able to do anything, which is incredible, considering that Xander has a 12-plus card hand right now, and he really can't do a whole lot.
He just played a Getsus, and the last Getsus wasn't good. I think he hit every card in Caleb's hand.
Looks like it.
He got, I think it was 7 cards off the Getsus. Caleb literally had a full hand of item cards, and he's literally playing with a 1-card hand now. And now Xander's thinking, hang on a second, maybe now I actually can. Maybe I can start taking some prizes. And I love that Caleb retreated to Sableye there, because if Xander's using foul play, then that Sableye is actually quite a good one to foul play. So it's quite nice that he didn't do that. He just got 1 card back onto his deck with Trubbish, which was the Getsus as we saw. But it means that Xander now doesn't have quite the same options for foul playing as he did before. Although if I was him, I think we might see a stand-in KO here. He did use a double puzzle of time on his previous turn to get 2 double colourless energies back. Which, if I'm Caleb, I'm looking at that thinking, I want a Team Skull Grunt so badly right now.
Oh, yeah.
He's such a good play.
Absolutely.
Oh, and he does. He plays a double Puzzle of Time. He gets a Versus Seeker, and he gets a Field Blower back. He uses Field Blower to turn on abilities again, although he doesn't get the Life Dew, which is a bit sad. You want to be using that. But now we get... Is that just a...
That's a choice ban.
Yeah, it's just getting it out of his hand.
Yeah.
That doesn't do anything for him at this stage. But I thought he had... I thought he had a double colourless in hand. It may have been an N or something. Oh, he has definitely got one now. He just drew it off that trade, which was very nice. Traded away an Entei, got a double colourless. And yeah, I mean, this is what I was expecting to see. You stand in so you don't lose your energy. You've now got abilities because you played the Field Blower to turn off the Garboda's Garbotoxin. Now you can take a prize. Is it too late to start taking prizes? Very good chance the answer to that question is yes. But maybe Caleb doesn't find his Enhanced Hammers or his Puzzle of Time for a couple of turns. And maybe not finding it for just a couple of turns gives Xander that out that he needs to then start taking those prizes.
There we go. There's a stand-in, and so it looks like he's finally going to be going for the offensive at this point, where he was able to do a couple turns of copying Junk Hunt with foul play, and now it looks like he's going straight for that knockout. Good situation for him because that Trashalanche Garbodor was threatening a lot of damage. And at the same time, by getting that Trubbish off the board, he's a little bit closer to getting Garbodor completely off the board, getting that Garbotoxin off the board without any real trouble to worry about, where essentially what's happening now is thanks to that one Gets several turns ago, the game has turned around in a sense where now it's almost as if he were playing Zoroark the first turn or two, like in an ideal situation, but he's showing his hand. He is
free. There was a Getsis coming down.
Yeah, Getsis, okay.
That was a card he put back on top with Trubbish with Garbage Collection.
Right.
So we knew that was coming this turn. I mean, free cards is pretty good. He got rid of some stuff, and now he's got information. It's not just that gets rid of those item cards from your opponent's hand, but you also get to know exactly what's in their hand, which means you can play out your turn with that certainty. You know what's in their hand, so you can start taking advantage of that and really going, okay, well, I know that they've got double colourless energy in their hand, so if they don't play it next turn, I know Team Skull Grunt's the way to go. Or I know they, don't have many supporters in their hand, so I don't play an N, because their hand is pretty unplayable. It's lovely to have that information, so you can make plays based on what you know is in your opponent's hand, so it's a weird situation where you actually know what the optimal play is, rather than guessing.
Which is incredible, where one of the main challenges in succeeding in the Pokemon card game is trying to take out as many of the chances as possible, trying to reduce the probabilities, where Pokemon as a card game is essentially a combination between, in many ways, poker and chess, where you get to rely on probabilities at times, but in the same breath, you're in a situation where you're thinking ahead, you're trying to figure out things. So when you reduce the probability, when you reduce the math element of the game down to a more certain situation, like what Caleb did by Getsising Xander, he has a better idea of how to plan out his turns in the near future, where if you're thinking just to the next turn, or if you're thinking several turns ahead, it makes a much bigger difference when you know, oh, my opponent has a single supporter card. Oh, my opponent has 2 or 3 different supporter cards that do completely different things.
I mean, there are some interesting plays going on here.
Oh,
Xander has got 2 double colourless on the Zoroark to give it that security. He's going to Junk Hunt here, and it's got to be for Puzzle of Times. Do you think he's got to go for a Special Charge at some point? He really wants to just get all of those energies back. Assuming he's playing Special Charge, I assume he is.
That's what I assume, but I'm double checking.
No, he might just play the Puzzle of Time, but he can still get them back. Caleb as well, he's actually gone and put a Life Dew on his Garboda, and this does 2 interesting things. It basically means that if Xander is prepared to forego abilities, he can guarantee that every Sableye he KOs gives up a prize, which is really good. But it means that if he Field Blowers to get rid of the Life Dew to turn his abilities back on, then Caleb can recover it and attach it to a Sableye. So that puts Xander in a really awkward position. If he can go through this game without abilities...
Oh, there's a double Enhanced Hammer right there, so all of Xander's planning was just thrown away there with a couple item cards right there.
That's got to be upsetting for Xander.
Well, maybe not, where he might have been planning ahead for it. He did use Junk Hunt. He foul played to copy Junk Hunt. A little convoluted, I know, but at any rate, he has the outs. He has the ability to get those double colorless energies back. But
I mean, it was risky because he could have just kept one on there, but then again, it's one of those, if I put two, he was playing the odds. He wanted Caleb to only get rid of one of them, but like you say, he's got the double puzzle of time, so he can still get them back. And then Junk Hunt for those puzzle of times again. And it's almost like he's kind of playing Caleb at his own game, but he is playing from behind at this stage. I don't know if just Junk Hunting is going to win this game for him.
Well, it's tough to say where it may or may not necessarily win him the game, but it could result in a situation where it could help him get into a tie scenario, or with the right math on Caleb's side, or I guess I should say the wrong math because it would be unfavorable to Caleb, he could potentially set Caleb up for a dead draw situation. A dead draw situation is when you have nothing you can do, you have no outs. Now, Caleb, even if he had a 0 card hand, he could still work with things because he would still have a single energy on one of his Pokemon. So even if Xander knocked out the active and Caleb brought up his bench Sableye with the blend energy on it, then he would still have options. So that's the incredible thing about Junk Hunt. It is an incredibly repetitive attack. You keep on hearing it over again, Junk Hunt, Junk Hunt, Junk Hunt, Junk Hunt. But at the same time, it keeps things going on for forever.
And it's a very skillful deck as well. It's not like, let's say, the old Mega Rayquaza deck, where it was just Emerald Break is going to KO whatever you've got, get into a position where you can Emerald Break, say the attack, take some prizes. Junk Hunt, okay, you're getting 2 item cards from your discard every turn, but there's a huge amount of skill in making that selection as to which item cards you want. And even when you go, well, I'll just get 2 Puzzle of Time, okay, but then there's a lot of skill in deciding what you use those Puzzle of Time for. Do you go for the energy? Do you get the Garbodor out? Do you go for the special energy denial? Caleb's been in a very good position for most of this game, and he can do everything. Most of the time, you're not that lucky.
Oh, and we have the end coming down, so...
And there's 2 energy again on that
two energy, and you know what Xander's doing? He is playing a math game over and over again by playing 2 double colorless onto that Zoroark in the active, because he is banking on Caleb not to have a way to answer both of them right away. So by doing that play, by repeating that play over and over and over again, he's creating almost kind of like a finite loop situation where you know there might be an end to it at some point, but it's a very slow, grindy game because he keeps on getting his puzzles of time to get more cards back the next turn, and eventually what Xander's hoping to do is score a knockout whenever it's convenient, and eventually, and I keep on using that word, eventually, that's because we have to have a lot of patience here, eventually he could pull off the win.
That's absolutely possible. Now, we did see a Getsis come down from Caleb there. Hit 5 item cards in Xander's hand, which is quite a few. Gets himself 5 new cards. I mean, if there was a supporter card that just allowed you to draw 5 cards, that would be played a lot. It'd be a really good card. I think it would see quite a lot of play, because it's just that brilliant thing of keeping the cards you've got, but drawing more. You've got 1 puzzle of time, you draw 5 cards, there's a decent chance you'll hit that 2nd puzzle of time. So, that's very nice for him. He just now needs to just keep doing what he's doing. The thing is, over these last couple turns, while Xander's been playing the end using Junk Hunt, the Trick Shovel lock has gone. That's what's missing from Caleb's game right now.
Absolutely. Where that was his win condition. That still technically is his win condition, but in what was a really dominant scenario for Caleb, anybody who has ever touched the game could look at that board from earlier and could more or less probably guess that Caleb was in a good spot in the first few turns, but it seems like it is very, very, very slowly turned into Xander's favor. Although, at least for, I guess if there's a silver lining in anything for Caleb, he can't activate counter energy, so...
Okay, that's always a good thing. I mean, I like to look at this, because Pokemon, I find, is a lot of the time, there's 2 plays you can make, and you never know which is the correct
and we have a
play.
counter catcher coming down, it looks like.
That is cool. Counter catcher, like counter energy, can only be used if you're behind on prizes. Caleb will almost always be behind on prizes, brings up that Oricorio into the active. Why is that significant? Because Oricorio has a retreat cost. It's only 1, but it has a retreat cost, so now he's going to try and force Xander. There's 2 energy on the Zoroark, which means that it's going to be very difficult, and now he jumps back.
He just top-decked a Floatstone. A Floatstone, a tool card, a special type of item card, lets you attach it to one of your Pokemon, and it automatically gets free retreat when you do. So Xander could potentially attach that, bring the Oricorio back, and continue right with his foul play junk hunt plan, doing his best to beat Caleb at his own game. Now, earlier, Xander had flashed a Bunnelby card from Primal Clash. That's a little bit different, but it has some of the same themes behind it as Trick Shovel in Junk Hunt, where Bunnelby can get cards back. It has a special ancient trait that lets it shuffle card back into your deck. You can attack twice, so effectively...
Omega Barrage.
That's right. Gotta love Omega Barrage right there. Omega Barrage is awesome, but there's the flip side of Bunnelby, where you can use Burrow to discard the top card of your opponent's deck. And I think there might be a possibility for Xander to do that later on in the game if he doesn't win on prizes. What do you think?
I definitely think that could be an option. I would be thinking about the Bunnelby because maybe he gets into the position soon where actually he can just discard a couple of cards, turn it in his favour. I was saying a minute ago, it got exciting. We had to go away from it. The N that Caleb played earlier, and it's a very much risk, and you don't know what the correct play is when you make it. It is, you're playing the odds, you're doing what you think is right at that time. That end was where the Trick Shovel ended because he stopped his Trick Shovel loop, as it were. He stopped Xander's options, but he lost the Trick Shovel loop. So you got to look back to that end and think, in hindsight, which is always better playing with hindsight, was it the best play? Although what I can tell you is, double enhanced hammer, getting rid of both for double colourless, I feel strongly that that was the best play at that situation.
Right. I mean, you're in a spot where essentially what you need to do is you need to keep Xander from playing the game, and that's a little bit hard because your whole deck revolves around getting cards back. That's what Sableye does. And so if your whole deck is about getting cards back and your opponent runs something that can copy everything that you do, then it's very much easier said than done to be able to pull that off, especially in a timely manner.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so difficult, and this is the problem with the Sableye deck. I love this Sableye deck. In concept, like, I can't play it, I do not have the patience for this deck, but I love it in theory. And the great thing about it is that when you get that lock up, you're practically unbeatable. But sometimes you lose the lock. And when you lose a lock, as has happened in this game, you end up in this situation where now... And this is the opposite of what I was saying earlier. Now you are struggling to get the special energy denial back. And now you're rushing to try and do 3 or 4 things every turn. And it's not what Sableye does. At the beginning of the game, he had all the energy. He had the life dew. He was getting rid of every energy that went down. And I made the point earlier on in the game that he's doing what it's not supposed to do. And he's just got everything set up and he's rolling. Now he's in the opposite of that. We do see a field blower come down, Garboda's off, and we have a stand-in.
And he's going for the offensive again.
We finally get another KO, John.
I know, right?
We've been waiting. We finally get a second KO.
We've been waiting for it.
Starting to get excited.
Oh my gosh.
Because there's not been many KOs. We need to make the most of every KO in this game.
You know what? This is to be clear to everybody watching. I don't know if you've been playing for 5 seconds or if you've been playing for your whole life. This is not a normal game of Pokemon cards. It's a very funny, fun, interesting, engaging game, but it is not normal. Normally people are knocking each other out. Instead, you have a very clever war of attrition going on between the two of them where they've been constantly trying to get resources back, and it looks like Caleb is changing his strategy a bit.
It does. Now, whenever I'm looking at a game like this, whenever I see a Shaman hit the field, that's significant. Because all of a sudden, maybe Xander gets a Guzma out. Maybe Xander then gets a KO on that Shaman. Maybe he takes 2 prizes. That's a third of the way to a win. In a game where we're celebrating the second KO after, I don't know, half an hour, 35 minutes, however long it's been, seeing a potential to just get a one-hit KO for 2 prizes, that is huge.
I don't know exactly how long it's been, but time flies when you're having fun. Although... it seems like everything loops back in one way or another, and Caleb might actually be gunning for an aggressive Garbodor here, where he, as we've been talking about, has discarded so many items from Xander's deck. I don't even want to guess how many items are discarded at this point, but I'm assuming that even with the resistance, it's enough.
Okay, so we've actually got 7.5 minutes left in this game, we're being told. Which, we're in an awkward situation. This game might just not end and go to a tie.
It's incredible. We are in a situation where I think the tea leaves are kind of reading that if this went on for 60, 70, 80 minutes, whatever, however much we would need, Xander would eventually win. But now time is running really low. He might be kind of catching on to that. He might be aware of it. I mean... if you've been in this game, it's really engaging. If you're there at the table, I bet it's even more engaging. But at this point, he might need to change his strategy a little bit.
Well, he has been changing the strategy. We saw a Guzma come down. He went after the foul play Zoroark, got a KO with that Trash Lunch with Garbodor, which was quite important. And essentially at this stage, he's looking and he's going, you know what? If he can't return KO, then I can just run for... He could literally take 6 prizes in a row. He could just keep KOing and keep KOing until he actually wins the game here. And now Xander is on a clock. Every turn he doesn't have a return KO, he knows he's giving a KO to Caleb. Guaranteed.
Absolutely. And now Caleb is in the driver's seat potentially where, oh, it looks like I might have spoken too soon because Xander's going aggressive here. He's got it. He looks like he might have a knockout for Caleb's #1 attacker in his entire deck. So
he's got the stand-in.
He's got the stand-in. He's half of the way there.
Even if Caleb was able to get that Garbodor back, there's no Trubbish on his field. He can't just get it up in one turn. So now he's back to junk hunting. And the problem is, this is fine. In an untimed game, this is fine. It's not an untimed game.
And so it's not fine at all.
No. I mean, at the moment, it doesn't look like anyone's going to win this game. Unless, now Xander's thinking, maybe if I just keep attacking with Zoroark, I can win the game. And let's not forget, there's a Shaman on the field. That Shaman, really what that represents at the moment is an extra turn. That is one more turn he doesn't need to take a KO by taking 2 prizes on a Shaman. And in a game like this, which even if it doesn't go to time, it's going to be pretty gosh darn close.
It's going to be by the skin of his teeth. Although, every little bit you can get counts now. If you were in Caleb's position right now, you were probably looking at it from the opposite end. You were probably going to be doing whatever you can to preserve your tie. Getting a single match point, you get 3 match points for a win, 1 for a tie, none for a loss. So he wants that extra little bit of help in order to advance into day 2. And when he makes it to day 2, if he makes it to day 2, then get that extra point to give you a little bit more edge against your competition.
That's absolutely right. The match points. Oh, there comes the enhanced hammer. That's big. He needs to keep getting rid of those double colorless energy because otherwise Xander is 2 KOs away from winning this game. Question is, can he get them back? I cannot see what's in his hand. Now, the good news is I don't believe that Garbodor has a tool right now.
Oh, and it looks like he's definitely trying to draw his cards a little bit quickly just to get what he needs to try to get something workable from here because... it seems like, I can just kind of tell it by his body language right now, it seems like Xander's definitely aware of how much time's elapsed and so how little time he's got left to draw those last 3 prizes.
Well, you've said yourself, Xander's an experienced player, and you do find the longer you play this game, the more of an internal clock you get that feeling of, I've been playing for a while now.
He just used Wonder Tag. Is that a tool on Garbodor?
No, I don't believe there is a tool on Garbodor.
I see. There's a glare on the screen. It's Trubbish, you're right.
It's the same thing that tricked us early. Oh, there we go. We can see it clearly there now.
Yeah,
it tricked us earlier in the game, but I'm not falling for it a sec. Fool me once, Garbodor. Shame on you.
That whole deck's just really tricky. I mean, you got the Trubbish, then you got the Trick Shovel.
Yeah.
It is something else.
I mean... At this stage, it looks like, and I could well be wrong, that this game has gone back. In a weird way, this has been a back-and-forth game. The momentum's been shifting. But it really does look like the imperative here is on Xander. Can Xander get KOs? And if he can keep getting KOs, he can win this game.
Oh, and unfortunately, Caleb has double puzzle. Unfortunately for Xander, Caleb has double puzzle of time, so he'll be able to get even more resources back. And... possibly save that Garbodor from being knocked out.
Well, he's got to go for a floatstone here.
Yeah.
You get it safe from being knocked out while turning off your opponent's abilities.
There's no way. I mean, you have to. Like, there really isn't that much else you could do. I don't know exactly where Caleb might be coming from this situation, but I don't think that he would feel very confident about being able to pull the win, especially with so little time left. He's gunning for that tie.
I think he's just got to start going aggressive Trick Shovel again. Now, he's not in as good a position as he was earlier in the game. The aggressive Trick Shovel might not work like it did earlier on in the game, but I think at this stage, it's just got to be aggressive Trick Shovel, just getting rid of cards, just going for it. I think that's got to be the way you go here, because he's not taking the 6 prizes. We're running short of time, and I think at this stage for Caleb, it's got to be, you know what, I'm just going to keep playing Trick Shovel. The thing that really intrigues me, though, he used a Trick Shovel and chose not to discard the card from Xander's deck.
Right.
Given how crucial it is that he decks out Xander, What's that card?
He chose to keep it, yeah. And at that point, there's a pretty good chance that it is a relatively unplayable card. Xander's deck, and we haven't even gotten to talk that much about some of the clever things that he has in his list. He has a couple of those special single copy basic Pokemon to normally activate with the counter energy, and that's the only way he can attack with them. But unfortunately for Xander, that has not been possible against this deck. Not possible against this matchup at all. And so those have just been sitting. So it looks like he's going for a lot of bench Pokemon with that Skyfield.
I think he's just trying to use his resources as much as
whatever
possible.
he can.
I mean, the thing I would be careful of if I was Xander, if it does come down to looking like you're going to get decked out, an N can save you, and the more cards you save in your hand before the N is played, then the larger your deck is going to be after the N comes down. So I think Xander at this stage is probably feeling fairly secure that he's not going to get decked out. Otherwise, I think he'd probably save those Pokemon just so that when the end comes down, he's going to be
And
okay.
it looks like it's time. Time has been called.
And that's still possible, depending on whose turn it was called. If time was called on Caleb's turn, then Xander will have 2 more turns. If he can get a KO on something, followed by a KO on Shaman, that is a good trick shovel. Got rid of the computer search. So it's possible for Xander to still win. If he has 2 turns, and we know time's been called, I assume it's Caleb's, I'm hoping it's Caleb's turn, just because that's how I'm talking about it. He can then KO a single prize Pokemon, then a Shaman, and that would be the game.
And it looks like Caleb and Xander did something very helpful for us, where it looks like they decided to fan out the remaining cards in Xander's deck. So if we are right, and if that is his entire deck, that's only 4 or 5 cards left.
That's 4, I believe.
That's not that much. So your discussion earlier about the aggressive trick shoveling, being able to look at the card, discard it, I don't think that Caleb will have to worry too much about looking. I think he will just say discard, 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 game. But he has to deal with the clock at the same time because, remember, these are the +3 turns, so he might not be able to pull it off.
I wouldn't even look at this stage. I'm a very aggressive player by nature, John, all right? So I don't know if you should necessarily listen to me, but I'm just like, just go. Just discard it, get rid of it, don't care. I'm just getting rid of it.
Get rid of it.
The other thing that must be borne in mind here, if Caleb's going for the deck out, Xander has to have another turn. It's a mistake I've seen made on a number of occasions. If your opponent has 0 cards in their deck, but the game is over, that's not a win condition.
It is a tie. That has happened to me at least 2 times before. It was a crucial tie, and it looks like that's actually a strong possibility here because both players... Maybe not both players, definitely Caleb, but maybe Xander too. It looks like there is a possibility, if I'm seeing that right. How many cards does it look like Caleb has left in his deck?
Caleb? Oh, I don't know.
You think he has more?
3. It might even be 3. In which case...
3, okay, we're getting word that it is 3 cards left in his deck. 3
total.
Xander.
I'm just thinking Bunnelby.
Yeah.
It's like, let's just go Bunnelby. Let's do this.
Yeah, that's an option, assuming he's got the cards in his hand to do it. So this is an incredible game. This is just down to the wire. Although it looks like... Oh, and it looks like he got it!
Shovel for the win! Assuming Xander
gosh.
has another turn, which he must, or else it wouldn't be so exciting. Trick Shovel, double puzzle of time for 2 more Trick Shovel, discarding all 3 cards, and then Xander gets his turn, but there's no card to draw.
Wow!
Xander decks out, and Caleb wins!
What an incredible game!
What an ending!
Over 50 minutes. That game took over 50 minutes, but we have finally arrived at a winner, and it looks like it's Caleb, unless I saw something wrong.
No, Caleb won that. Caleb won by deck.
That's incredible.
Unless Xander didn't have another turn, but I'm pretty sure he didn't. And that answers one of my key questions. I was thinking, hang on a second. Why is he not discarding with a Trick Shovel? The one point I always make to people, the players have more information than we do. They can see their hands, they can search their discard. So I didn't know, but he knew that he could discard every last card.
And he was saving them. He was saving them. He was planning well in advance, and so that was always an option. He was thinking several turns ahead at that point, where there's only so much speculation that can be done, but at the same time, by saving all those resources, by being very careful with every little card that he played, he was able to set that perfect situation up.
Yeah, it was, I mean, because he looked at it and it was a Skyfield, and I'm thinking, well, why don't you just, because I said myself I'd go